Taiwan is ending September on what looks like a high note. In Arizona, TSMC is doubling down on its U.S. expansion, turning Phoenix into the now beating heart of the American chipmaking. And back at home, science parks here in Taiwan are breaking records, buoyed by AI boom and Nvidia's jaw-dropping $100 billion tie-up with OpenAI. The economy is also surprising analysts, with growth forecasts nudging up towards 5% this year. And for a small island facing constant headwinds, Taiwan's strength in semiconductors, AI, and high-tech manufacturing is actually a formidable anchor. But every high comes with its twist. Across the Pacific, Nvidia is investing $5 billion into Intel, signaling that US tech giants want more than one foundry partner. And in Washington, forced labor allegations have blindsided Taiwan's biggest bike maker, Giant, dragging its stock down nearly 9%. And in geopolitics, Taiwan was absent from a 2-hour phone call between President Trump and Xi, a reminder that Taipei's fate is often at the mercy of these bigger power bargains. Still, Taiwan is not standing still. President Lai Ching-te is urging biotech to become the island's next industrial titan, while strengthening military spending and asymmetric defense to meet U.S. demands for peace through strength. Quote, Taiwan's envoy to the U.S., Alexander Yu, said that Taiwan has already invested billions into America's reindustrialization, underscoring that survival lies in both innovation and alliance. So this week's stories reveal a Taiwan that shines globally but wrestles with, moments of fragility. It's a Taiwan adapting, diversifying, and signaling that it intends to remain indispensable. Let's get to it. Hi, you're listening to Beyond the Reefs, a show produced by Radio Taiwan International. Here we talk about socio-economic issues that are faced by Taiwan and their broader impact around the world beyond the reefs of this island nation. Let's get to our first story today.
Taiwanese chip developer MediaTek is in talks with chipmaker TSMC to use its US production facilities. A senior MediaTek official says the company could use TSMC's Arizona fabs to make chips for cars or for some sensitive applications. The official says it's partly because of US tariffs and because some US customers prefer locally made products. MediaTek already works with TSMC, producing its latest chipset in Taiwan.
Yes, as you heard, TSMC's investments in the United States are transforming Arizona into the new focal point of global chip making. This year, the Arizona-Taiwan Trade and Investment Office announced that TSMC's U.S. expansion will include 6 wafer fabs, 2 advanced packaging plants, and 1 R&D center, a total investment of $165 billion. So this clustering effect is already very visible. Semicon West, held in San Francisco for 50 years, will now alternate with Phoenix before eventually settling there. Taiwanese chip designers MediaTek, the world's largest by shipments, also confirmed that it is in talks with TSMC to produce certain chips to Arizona. Executives hinted that automotive or sensitive applications were under review, reflecting U.S. customer concerns over tariffs and supply chain security. And reports say that TSMC has already secured 15 customers for its 2-nanometer processes. And off the back of the news, TSMC shares hit a new high this week. So the expansion underlines a strategic shift. Taiwan remains the innovation core, but the U.S. wants its production localized. So this reflects not only American industrial policy, but also customer pressure for diversified supply chains. And this is wild. It's like Taiwan is building a shadow chip island right inside the U.S. The 4-nanometer production in Arizona means that TSMC is showing that it can export not just low-end foundry work, but truly advanced nodes overseas. There's a trade-off though, cost. Building in the US costs more than in Taiwan, of course. Land, regulation, labor, and the talent pool, it's still catching up. So while Phoenix shines, Taiwan still needs to keep upgrading its home base so it doesn't lose its edge. Now to our second story. Taiwan's 3 major science parks reported record revenue of $2.7 trillion, that's about $90 billion in the first half of 2025, up 26% 8.7% year-on-year. Hsinchu contributed about 820 billion Taiwan dollars, Central Taiwan about 540 billion Taiwan dollars, and Southern Taiwan about 1.38 trillion new Taiwan dollars. Officials expect full-year revenue to hit approximately 180 billion US dollars. That's pretty impressive given the economic headwind facing the world. So behind this surge is the spread of AI, investment in cloud services and edge computing, and surging demand for semiconductors, of course. US chip giant Nvidia pledged 100 billion US dollars with OpenAI to build AI data centers, fueling demands that flows directly into Taiwan's ecosystem, mostly thanks to TSMC's 2nm processes. It's already being oversubscribed with 15 customers lined up. Yet, challenges loom over Taiwan. Officials pointed to tariff policy, exchange rate volatility, and U.S. Section 232 trade measures as risks. Some also warned of speculation about an AI bubble. Although Taiwan's National Science and Technology Council Minister Wu Zhenwen argued that development is still very early, with semiconductors remaining indispensable. And it feels like Taiwan science parks are capturing the AI tailwind, with Nvidia and OpenAI pushing demand. Taiwan's full chain is humming. But here's the thing, boom times attract imitators. If demand outpaces supply that TSMC can offer, or new export rules clamp down, then customers are forced to look elsewhere, and these gains can reverse very fast. The question isn't just how big can this get, but how stable and how durable can this go? And for our third story today, economists now believe Taiwan's economy could grow as much as 5% this year. That's a sharp improvement from earlier forecasts. The Taiwan Institute of Economic Research, TIER, they reported stronger business climate indicators in August. Manufacturing rose by 1.79 points, services by 1.01 points, and construction by 2.66 points. So TIR's Sun Mingde says that U.S. tariff policy has been priced in, with the Taiwan dollar weakening in August to offset shocks. China's moves to tackle overcapacity also boosts confidence. He predicted that momentum could last through early 2026. And fellow director Zhang Jianyi noted that artificial intelligence outperformed expectations and that a nationwide 10,000 NT dollars cash handout from the government would stimulate domestic demand further. Still, traditional sectors lag behind. Tariffs weakened European demand, and Chinese dumping weighs on older industries. Zhang cautioned that while the government can provide short-term support, companies, they have to invest in upgrading and transforming. And this kind of growth in a turbulent year is pretty impressive, but it's like catching a wave. You have to ride it. And the new economy sectors, AI, biotech, high-end manufacturing, are pulling Taiwan upward. The old ones may lag, but the momentum from tech and domestic demand might carry enough weight to drag others forward. Taiwan's job is to turn momentum into consistency. And for our fourth story today,
the global AI race is heating up. Chipmaker Nvidia says it will invest up to $100 billion in OpenAI, a move that brings together the two biggest names in the AI market. The deal gives Nvidia a financial stake in OpenAI while ensuring the AI powerhouse keeps buying Nvidia's advanced chips, the same technology driving its rapid growth. Analysts warn the partnership could trigger antitrust concerns given the dominance of both companies. But investors jumped on the news, with Nvidia shares rising as much as 4.4% after the announcement.
Yes, at the end of last week, Nvidia announced a $5 billion investment in Intel, aiming to co-develop customized CPUs for data centers and system-on-chips combining Intel CPUs with Nvidia GPUs. So this partnership could generate, according to Jensen Huang, approximately $50 billion annually. At a press conference, Jensen emphasized that the U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick was supportive but not directly involved. Intel CEO Lip-Bu Tan deflected questions about foundry readiness, stressing only that yields are improving and that TSMC remains a key partner. Insiders told the Wall Street Journal wafer production would still be handled primarily by TSMC, with Intel managing packaging. Now, this move kind of creeps into the threat zone for TSMC and by relations for Taiwan. Intel is back in the game, and with Nvidia's weight behind them, it's not just symbolic. The reassuring tone about TSMC is smart PR, but if Intel's yield and capacity improved, customers might explore alternatives, and TSMC can't take its dominance for granted. It has to keep proving its lead every year, especially knowing how much the US government is supportive of revitalizing the elite status of Intel and making it, the prime chip maker of the country. Now on to our fifth story.
The United States has blocked imports of Taiwan-made products from Giant, the world's largest bicycle manufacturer, citing concerns about forced labor. U.S. Customs and Border Protection, or CBP, says it will detain all bikes, parts, and accessories made in Giant's Taiwan factories. CBP says it identified several indicators of forced labor as defined by the International Labor Organization, including abusive vulnerability, abusive working and living conditions, debt bondage, withholding of wages, and excessive overtime. And they say that Giant profited by imposing such abuse, resulting in goods produced below market value and undercutting American businesses. At issue here seems to be the conditions for migrant workers employed at Giant's Taiwan factories. And these workers come mostly from Southeast Asia. And in particular, this issue of what's called debt bondage, where workers pay thousands of US dollars in upfront fees to get these jobs, which can take years to pay back. Between the debt and the fact that their visa is tied to a single job, many of them are effectively bound to their employers until the debt is paid. In response to the order, Giant says it's committed to upholding human rights and labor protections, and it has taken actions, including implementing a zero recruitment fee policy, under which all recruitment agency and government-related fees for newly hired migrant workers will be paid by the company. And last year, they say they completed upgrades to employee housing. In a further statement to Taiwan Plus, Giant says the CBP has never conducted any on-site investigation at its Taiwan facilities, and the company has never been contacted by CBP for interviews or inquiries, and that it was surprised by the order. Taiwan's economy ministry also responded, saying they intended to help the company restore its reputation and help resolve the forced labor issues it may be involved in.
Yes, the U.S. Customs and Border Protection issued a without release order, WRO, against Taiwan's Giant Manufacturing, citing alleged forced labor practices such as wage withholding and excessive overtime. The company denies the allegation, calling the order based merely on suspicion. Giant's shares, regardless, fell 8.95%, the steepest drop since 2010. The order impacts only Taiwan to U.S. exports, about 4 to 5% of its total revenue, but the reputational hit is a broader impact. Giant said it adopted a zero recruitment fee policy in January 2025 and upgraded worker dormitories in 2024, stressing compliance with labor standards. Analysts say the case appears isolated but could pressure other firms to review labor practices. And should, really. This is a serious red flag. In fact, we've previously reported on Taiwan's migrant workers and the less than ideal working conditions that they often find themselves in. This piece of news signals that trade infractions now go beyond tariffs and subsidies. Labor standards are being weaponized. For Taiwan, factories must be clean, not only in output, but in inputs, meaning how they treat workers. Any slip-up fuels narratives that Taiwan's competitiveness is unsustainable and possibly unacceptable to international labor standards. Companies will need HR audits as much as tech audits these days. And now for these global headwinds, on with our sixth story.
Taiwan's envoy to the U.S. says Taiwan is closely watching U.S.-China relations to make sure it does not get, quote, thrown under the bus in U.S.-China talks. Alexander Yui made the comments in an interview with Foreign Policy magazine. He downplayed concerns that Taiwan might be left alone to face threats from China without U.S. support, saying America's policy toward Taiwan remains unchanged. The interview follows Friday's phone call between U.S. President Donald Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping, and a Washington Post report saying Trump had halted hundreds of millions of dollars in military aid for Taiwan amid trade talks with China.
Yes, U.S. President Donald Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping spoke for nearly 2 hours on September 19, focusing on trade and the TikTok deal, but in those 2 hours, never mentioning Taiwan. Analysts say the omission reflected urgency to settle economic issues ahead of the APEC summit, not declining importance for the island country. Taiwan's Danjiang University's Zhang Wuwei noted that U.S.-Taiwan ties have been relatively stable, leaving Beijing little room to exploit. A professor from National Cheng Kung University added that Washington might even consider suspending certain military aid to keep Taiwan off the table in further bilateral talks with China. Finally, researcher and director from the Stimson Center told the New York Times that Beijing may offer concessions on TikTok to improve ties, while Trump frames progress as a symbolic win. Analysts caution that contradictions over tariffs, tech exports, and Taiwan remain unresolved, in their opinion. So it is weird to be invisible in such a high-stake talk, but sometimes silence could be tactical from the two countries, and I'm talking about the US and China. By not mentioning Taiwan, both sides avoid escalating tension before the trade talks land. But the risk is clear. If Taiwan isn't part of the conversation, then decisions about its future may be made over its head. Taipei must stay audible in corridors of power, not just on the front pages. So in the face of Taiwan's potential waning influences, President Lai Ching-te is pushing biotech as the next major pillar of Taiwan's economy, framing it as a possible second TSMC. The sector generated approximately $25.7 billion last year. It's a record. Areas of growth included pharmaceuticals, regenerative medicine, medical AI, agricultural biotech, and health foods. Lai praised the Taiwan Bio Awards for driving momentum and pledged more government support through investment, regulatory reforms, and public-private partnerships. The National Development Fund is committing billions into smart healthcare startups. Still, challenges remain. Global competition is intense, regulatory hurdles are high, and U.S. tariffs affect exports. So biotech is a bold pivot. Unlike chip foundries, scaling biotech can be risky. Timelines are very long, failure rates are high, regulatory gates are very steep, and if Taiwan can create even more global biotech brand, its value proposition diversifies, which is great. But yes, like we said, there are risks. The biotech bet is Taiwan saying that, hey, we're not just about chips. With AI and bio intertwining, it could be the perfect hedge or the place where overreach shows. We will see. But until then, our final story is going to buy us more time. In an op-ed for American publication that serves more conservative and right-wing viewers or readers, Taiwan's envoy to the U.S., Alexander Yu, called the island an invaluable partner to the U.S. He cited TSMC's $165 billion US dollar investment to the Arizona project and noted that 40% of Taiwan's outbound investment now flows to the US. He also highlighted plans to raise defense spending to 3.32% of GDP and 5% by 2030, with nearly $4 billion US dollars allocated for arms purchases. Since 2016, Washington has approved $26 billion US dollars in arms sales, including $18.7 billion US dollars under Trump's first term. So the message is Taiwan is aligning itself with Trump's reindustrialization push while preparing for asymmetric defense against China, but most importantly, willing to spend money on US goods. Well, U.S. defense goods. Now, this is Taiwan playing smart chess. By aligning with U.S. industrial strategy and promising serious defense upgrades, they're making themselves too valuable to ignore. But this also deepens dependency. You have to deliver results, maintain discipline, avoid becoming a pawn. Taiwan has to be seen not just as a client, but as a stable, capable partner. Now, we continue to stress our point that Taiwan stands at a sharp inflection point. Semiconductor fabs consume massive amounts of electricity and ultra-pure water. Grid stability, droughts, and climate shocks could prove as dangerous as tariffs. So the test is clear. Can Taiwan hold its silicon shield while building new growth pillars, ensuring that it remains not a bargaining chip, but an indispensable partner in the reshaped global order? Well, we'll continue to answer these questions for you on this show. I'm Joey Chow. For more about Taiwan's socio-economic development and the forces shaping its future, let's go Beyond the Reefs again next week, right here with Radio Taiwan International. Until then, take care and thank you for listening.